Hello, hello. What's cracking? How are you? Welcome to episode number 2 of the Team Stronger Together podcast. Today's episode is airing January 9th, 2022. I'm Michael Gray. Let's get busy. Here we go. Once again, the way that I'm putting the podcast out there, you just YouTube search Working Together Team Stronger Together podcast, and in any of the words with together, the T and the O are removed, and the number 2. So Working Together Team Stronger Together podcast. That's how you can YouTube search. I'm also just going to keep putting out there. I have a free course, The Power of Preparation. It is how you can gain emotional intelligence skills or get better at them, or learn how you can share it with others. Like, it's a way for you to share with others, teach others using this curriculum. It's super powerful. It's super self-paced. um, there'll be Zoom classes each week also that you can participate in. There's the way to hit me up. You can email me at weareworkingtogether@gmail, or you can DM me on the Instagram at weareworkingtogether. All right. And then every Sunday night at 7 o'clock, you can join me on Instagram Live at We Are Working Together. And I do just kind of like a short synopsis of the podcast that's just been dropped. Let's get busy. I want to start with the education system revolution that needs to take place, has to have had taken place for decades and decades, and still has not. But I'm 37 years in and I will not give up. We're going to make this happen. Last week, I focused on empathy interviews I did with students and centered student voices. This week, I want to center teacher, educator voices, right? Because one without the other, we're not going to get anywhere. And we definitely have not listened to teachers, the good ones, the ones that are really, making a difference out there every day, and not just following curriculum, and not just, laying down classroom rules to sit still and all that kind of stuff. No, this is from teachers who are super effective, super caring, super willing to not just focus on GPA, grade point average, test scores, and all of that. All right. So here we go. I think I have 4 questions, and here's some responses that I got. Let's look at this. This is really interesting and super important. What is something that you want students to know about you? So I asked educators this, and this was a good response, a typical response. I'm a parent first, and I view my students as my kids. So, my first priority is to help them feel safe and valued above all else. I have high standards and I have high expectations for achievement, but I try to communicate that these are, in fact, just goals to aspire to. It's not something to measure one's worth or potential by. So, obviously, this teacher and the teachers who gave this answer came up a lot in different variations. It's like, no, I want to stretch my kids. I want to challenge them. But I want to support them while I challenge them. And if they're accomplishing the expectations, they're not any more important to me than the ones that aren't, right? So it's, how am I going to push those that need a little bit? How am I going to, those that are doing well, how am I going to temper that with, like, look, just because you got an A, that's not why you should feel good about yourself. You should feel good about yourself because that's what we need to do from within. All right. However, it is important to be able to set goals, work hard, achieve stuff, right? And then keep moving forward. Okay, let's go on to the next one. What are some of your self-care practices? How do you take care of your social, emotional, physical, spiritual health? Right? This comes up a lot. There's article after article, and I'm going to deal with this in a few minutes. So many articles about teacher burnout, teachers leaving, the crisis in education that is happening minute by minute as we speak. And so for the teachers, I asked, well, how do you take care of yourself? And this is a typical response. This came up over and over again in different forms and variations. Asking for help is very hard for me. But I have learned that there are times in life when I must step back from my responsibilities, seek out the support of a therapist, and surrender to the understanding that I cannot be all things to all people at all times. When I am emotionally or spiritually depleted, for this particular teacher, and nature came up a lot. When I'm emotionally or spiritually depleted, immersing myself in nature is very restorative. All right, which points to, everyone has their ways of getting re-energized, and I'm going to deal with that in a minute. How we can get everybody to do that. All right, hard one. What do you need to feel supported and or empowered in your role as an educator? All right, I need others to have faith in my integrity and abilities and trust me to make the social, emotional, curricular decisions that are responsive to my students' current needs without judgment. Meaning, all the stuff from the top down that's crowding my space is messing up my ability to connect with my students, my ability to tweak the curriculum so that it makes sense to students, okay? And I'm refusing to teach to tests, okay? I'm refusing to teach just for GPA. I'm refusing. What I'm trying to do is meet the needs of all my kids, those that are getting it, those that are not, those that are in between, on basically individual bases as much as possible, right? But yet I have all of this top-down stuff, pacing charts, once again, standardized testing that is non-stop messing with my vibe and my flow in my classroom. Okay. Now, this is not saying I don't need to be held accountable. We all need to be held accountable, right? However, the students should be holding us accountable and our parents should be holding us accountable, right? I ask my students in class to give me a grade, give my lessons a grade. They grade me as much as I give them grades, okay? So that's the kind of accountability that adds to building relationships, that adds to gaining knowledge. All right. So let's keep going. I think this is the last one. It's super important. How can we humanize the disconnect between teachers and students? All right, good. These are good answers. As teachers, I think we have a responsibility to meet students where they are. It's in air quotes, where they are, not where they are supposed to be. And we need to work to make our curriculum as culturally relevant as possible, meaning like we always have to look out for what's going to, like, and I don't say this in a bad way, but push the buttons in a good way in terms of engagement, in terms of interest, in terms of, like I said, keep saying, gaining real knowledge. That's the kind of curriculum that we have to have, not the, open up to chapter 4. Okay? I also believe it's important for teachers to stay in touch with their inner I-N-N-E-R, their inner teenager. Because when we remember how awkward, difficult, joyous that time in our lives was, well, we have more empathy and understanding of what our students are experiencing. Man, every day I'm sharing stories about back in the day because there's not, even though the times are different, going through high school is very similar from when I did in the 70s to 2022. Yes, there are huge differences, of course. All right. However, just the time frame of lifetime, ages 13, 14, up through 18, 19, that's very similar, right? And so the more that I can meet my students where they are, as opposed to where I don't even think where they should be. That's not even in my vernacular. However, a lot of teachers try and press kids into where they think they should be. Okay. Now, once again, just because I meet my students where they are, these teachers that responded like this meet their students where they are, that doesn't mean we're not encouraging. That doesn't mean that we're not um, like pushing, but not with both hands, like, pushing them out the door, but like pushing, meaning giving ways to be successful, right? That's how we get down. So you can meet them where they are and still hold expectations, meaning, and achievement oriented goals. Duh, we can do that and we have to. And once again, when we're able to do this as teachers, we really hone and daily gain the skill of empathy and understanding. And it's a good self awareness thing too. Like, yeah, I understand. All right. So now what are we going to do? Now you just keep moving on like that. All right. I want to address the burnout. I want to address the situation, the very real situation that teachers are going through. But I'm going to come at it from a way uh, that maybe you're not expecting. I'm not sure. All right. Sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, burnt out, unmotivated, because we're doing too much, right? It's just so much. There's so much on my plate. I've had that said to me over and over again. In fact, I do a presentation for educators called the full plate presentation because I already know your plate is full. I teach 195 students. I see 5 to 10 students a day with mental health and just life situations, right? Actually, I have more than 195 students. So there's a lot on our plates. But here's the main part of this quote. So sometimes when we feel overwhelmed, burnt out, unmotivated because we are doing too much, here's the flip. Most of the time, it's because we are doing too little of what makes us powerful, of what makes us come alive, of what makes us able to work through the difficulties of life. All right? We have to develop the skill of, and I'm grateful that I have for most of my 37 years. Well, really no, like the very beginning, I was trying to do what the top down always wanted us to do. Okay. But since then, no, we have to develop the skill of, yes, achieving what school districts and schools want us to achieve, but within the parameter of what's best for kids, right? What's best for families. Okay. And I can't do it at the expense of my well being. But then we separate it, like my well being, my kids, the students' well being's over here, and the parents' well being over here. And that gets all separated. And that's never worked. Yet that's how we approach this whole, like, school is so crazy right now. The system is crazy. Schools are here, like, dealing with COVID and dealing with quote unquote learning gaps and I don't call them achievement gaps, but the forever been going on opportunity gaps. Yeah, those are all real, but we keep separating them out. And I want to show you how, if we would just come at it from a unified effort, that we would make a difference. All right, I want to share something with you. I really respect Mark Brackett. He is the founder, the leader dude of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. He has a good program. I don't use all of it. It's called Ruler, Ruler, but it's dope. I use bits and pieces of it. But here, watch. So Mark Brackett, the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence leader, founding director, hello, recently surveyed 22,000 high school students from across the United States, asking them to describe how they feel in school. Here we go. 75% of the words they used were negative, like tired, bored, and stressed were the top three. Also, when we gave 6,000 US educators a similar survey, respondents said they spend nearly 70% of their days at school feeling frustrated, overwhelmed, and stressed. Our research indicated that much of this stress was related to the climate and culture in the educators' schools. Mark Brackett goes on to say, you get the picture. Students and educators spend a big part of their waking hours with feelings not conducive to learning and teaching. How clearly do you suppose kids think when they're feeling tired, bored, and stressed? How well do they absorb new information or engage in conversations leading to deeper understanding? We all know the answers to those questions. Here's another one, but for educators. And how effective would you guess educators are when they're frustrated or overwhelmed? Well, the answers are super obvious, right? Here's my point. Going on to the next slide. Here's my point about this research from Mark Brackett at the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and what I've been saying over and over and over again for years and years, especially these last 2 years. That study is from 2018. It's nothing recent. And it was probably, the survey was probably done in 2017 leading into 2018. It's just more and more evidence of how we've always been neglectful. This is not new. Has it been amplified by distance learning? Yes. Has it been exacerbated by all this stuff? Yes, most definitely. However, it has been going on and on and on and on since forever, since my 37 years. Okay, and let me tell you how. Okay, we have refused to elevate mental wellness skills and emotional intelligence skills equal to academics. We have forever decided that it is more important to pump out just college ready, or not even ready, college eligible students, okay? And then everyone else, well, maybe you graduate, maybe you don't. Well, we want a good graduation rate, but what are they leaving high school with? Okay? We don't even really get that far. Okay? Now, over the last however many years, not too many, about the last decade, we have started to do something that's actually been counterproductive because of what we refuse to do. All right? And been super neglectful. I'm using that word on purpose because it's a legal term. All right? Neglect. We have normalized that there is trauma in young people's lives, in grown people's lives, in everyone's lives, right? That's good. We have normalized that anxiety exists, that depression exists, okay? That's good because for a long time, all of that was kept hidden and that was terrible. However, here's what we've done. We have normalized that it exists. So now on the tips of all of our tongues are trauma, anxiety, anxiousness, stress, depression. I don't feel motivated. Okay? So we've done all that, and now everyone's walking around with that on their mind and an explanation for all sorts of things that are, not being done or going on in my life. That's fine. That's kind of a step. But what it's done, it has created people without the skills and the abilities to maneuver through all that stuff. So now I feel powerless. And the fact that I feel powerless is one of the worst things that I can feel as a human being. And then that leads to all sorts of behaviors. So we have been neglectful. We have not normalized that we have the capacity to gain the skills and the abilities to make it through this stuff. And we always have. Okay? And so since 1992, the folks that I've been working with, that really understand how this education system has always needed to be revolutionized. Okay? Since 92, no one's been listening to us. Now they're kind of listening to us, but not really, because there's a grip of money attached to mental health and equity. Okay? So now at this point, some of the framework has been put in place, but it's window dressing at this point, a lot of it. Okay, and I'm going to show you in further into the podcast what I mean by window dressing, interventions, and stuff like that. Just take me like I'm good. I know I'm opening up a can of worms, but I want to open up a can of worms. All right, so once again, we've been neglectful because we have not normalized building mental wellness skills and building emotional intelligence skills while normalizing that people can be anxious, have anxiety, right? Uh, Depression, and so on and so forth. All right. So what can we do? I'm going to share this slide. I shared it last week, kind of really quick, but I'm going to share it throughout the podcast because this ties together the disconnect with the teachers, the families, the students. I'm going to say when we are willing as classrooms and schools and districts and country to weekly, daily, each week, try and do better at just these 4 things to start out with. I practice a breathing technique for 1 minute. I'm over on the far right. Okay? I really worked at breathing through my nose all day. The benefits of proper breath work are legendary in terms of research and mental health. Did I drink my water? Did I exercise? Did I get my proper sleep? Am I eating veggies and fruit? Okay? Those are all crucial. And once again, they are all tied to science and research and mental health and emotional intelligence. Living in the power of gratitude. Am I doing that on the daily? Okay, and that's actually our life skill for a lifetime later on in the podcast. I got a really good activity exercise to do. And then fourth, how am I doing each day at catching myself when I start complaining or speaking negatively about myself, speaking negatively about others, speaking negatively about my situation? All right. And this is a no judgment zone. No one's perfect at this. However, to not even try and not even like do this, we're wasting our days. All right? And we're just kind of like going through each day trying to see if it's going to work out. Okay? Our immune system is tied to this. Our mental health is tied to this. Our emotional intelligence is tied to this. Okay? Every skill that I want to get better at is tied to this stuff. Okay? And as you see at the bottom where it says tomorrow begins today, there's no reason to wait till tomorrow. You can do one of these things today. I can do one of these things today. You can do this in your classroom. I do it in my classroom. Okay? And when I say that, I'm not like, oh, I'm such a bomb teacher. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I'm willing to not be stuck to a pacing chart or a class course that I wrote and not be willing to adjust that's going to benefit everybody. And when we struggle through this together, we build real relationships. Okay. And I always put this on there about, being negative is super powerful in the wrong way. All right. And that's study after study after study. Okay. So the more that I can catch my negativity, the more room it allows for me to see possibilities, right? Now, speaking up and taking action for social justice, that's not complaining, it's not being negative, which is thrown in the face of a lot of folks who do stick up for those that are being messed with based on race or gender or sexual orientation, identity, okay? Or, how much money you have or what kind of car you drive or where you live. No, speaking up and helping folks going through that, that's not complaining. That's not being negative. That's good mental health. That's good emotional intelligence. All right. So that's the first part of this week's podcast, this episode. All right. It has a lot to do with we have to revolutionize the education system. And we have to respect our teachers. We have to respect our students. We have to respect our parents. Okay. And I just believe and know that if we are willing to build these mental wellness skills, these the foundations of emotional intelligence right here, using this simple rubric, and we do it daily, on the daily, every week, and it builds on each other, and then it becomes a habit, and those habits become a way of life, and we not just do them for ourselves, but we share them with others because of the benefits that we are feeling, right? That's what's going to have to happen. All right. So stay tuned for part 2.